What's up, y'all? How you doing today? It's like June 20th, 2024. Welcome to my channel. I'm Joshua, or Carpo, and I'm going to make a video here. Good evening. Uh, you know, my daily jive. What am I going to say today? You know, I I came home from work. It's a pretty damn hot day, and it's like in the 90s, and I decided to record a couple of poems. One was a long poem, one was a writing I did. So I made a video and a recording that will be uh, on my podcast. And I haven't uploaded them yet, and I don't know if I will. But that was one of the things, was being able to unload and just read something that I'd written. I don't even know how long it was. But when you get into that kind of mindset of writing or reading something, you just the time gets away from you. And it's interesting now that I say that. I wanted to look because it's on my audio recorder, but I'm guessing about 20 minutes. I don't know what, 5,000 words or something. Maybe that's a bad guess, but I tend to write these papers that are kind of scathing of the society I live in, which is funny because I talk a lot about society, but I try to be on the positive side. But I also am completely well aware of my dark side. And when I say that, I guess I remember when I was younger and I heard about that. I didn't really comprehend it until later in my life. Sure, you can think about the darkness, the weird ways that we think our brains work, the dark things we think about, the experiences that we have regarding death and whatnot. But it is more complex than that. But realizing that you have that darkness in you, that dark side that can come out, and feeding it is something that a lot of folks, I feel like they miss, and especially a lot of these modern spiritualist type, a lot of the, new age hippie community, I guess. And look, I'm one of them. I dress in all kinds of hippie garb, wear tie-dyes all the time, so it's like you can talk shit about your own fam, right? I'm a deadhead, go to shows. I love the music, and I go to Fish too. I don't like all jam bands. I'm not like that, one of those guys. I don't go to most jam bands, but there's a few I like. But anyway, this kind of hippie idea that that we have about that they have about well, a lot of things, the self-help, all these different things that that come up kind of in that community, the chakras, the healing crystals, um, a lot of dogma surrounding certain healing techniques, Reiki, things like that. And by the way, Reiki's only been around for about 100 years. um, it's just interesting, I guess, what people fall for. But I'm that's beside the point. A lot of folks are these hippie type, are very ultra positive, and believe that any negative emotion, it should be ignored. And if you confine any of your negative thoughts to a box and you don't let them out, you will build up resentment towards the world, and it will come out in a different way. This isn't something that's like metaphoric. It seems to be literal. Like, it's not something that anybody doubts. You can't put a scientific, you know, consensus on exactly how this happens. You don't bottle up resentment, right? You can't find a place where your anger sits and waits until you want to release it. But that seems to be the case. It's that we can push down our sadness, say we lose loved ones, and then something happens, we hear a song, and we just break down crying like months later, right? Your body knows how to hold off on releasing emotion. And that's very scary, because a lot of folks may ignore sadness, and yeah, they break down when their cat dies, or a pet dies, but it's really for a parent that died or something like that. But in the case of suppressing your emotion of anger, that's a little sketchier because you can explode, and that's why I find myself sometimes getting angry at other drivers, or because I have an issue with traffic. I don't mind sitting in traffic now. I have to deal with it. I know it's going to take me over an hour to get home, so I just sit there and roll along. But there's always that one guy that cuts in and out, and he'll be behind me and then try to get around me because I leave one car length in front of me, right? And I see him cutting around, so I close in. I'm not going to let a guy in pull that shit. Dude, you're getting 1 second ahead, but it's really annoying when people just weave in and out and cut on the side, where they're not supposed to, because they're more important than other folks. But I shouldn't let those things irritate me. It's like, that's somebody else, whatever, that's their problem. But I can't let it go. And I've been thinking about this for years, right? It's not something that's new. I'm pretty mellow. I'm not an aggressive driver. Like, a guy I work with was telling me that this dude pulled that shit on him, and he cut him off, like, and right behind this motorcycle guy, which had to cut over. And then he zoomed around on the rocks just to cut off my buddy for no reason, because he wanted to be ahead one more car. And so they went on my buddy was pissed because he had to slam on his brakes, and he almost got in an accident with the biker. So he followed them to the exit, and the dude rolled down his window. It was this younger Russian kid, and my buddy, who was a Mexican dude, he was like, "What the fuck, man?" And the guy's like, what? And the guy was like laughing, and he's like, "Tough shit." And my buddy said all he could think of is he had his hot coffee sitting there, and he just threw it. And the dude had his window halfway down, and it hit the bottom of the window and just splashed all over him. He's like, "Yeah, he was covered." And he said he was telling me he felt bad about it. He was afraid he was going to get in trouble and all these things. I was like, "Dude, don't worry about it. Like, that sucks. You shouldn't react that way. That's an angry reaction." But sometimes anger can, you can't help it. When people put you in danger, I get angry when I'm on the road and people cut me off and I have kids in the car, that kind of stuff, especially. Then you feel much more righteous if you actually have kids. And no, I'm not one of those people that has the baby on board sticker, that kind of shit. Like, yeah, I hate that. Sorry. It's kind of like the student driver stickers I see all over the place. I don't get it. But, it doesn't, nobody's going to crash into you on purpose. So it's like having those stickers is like, okay, great, you have a baby, but, I'm going to be careful anyway. I don't want to hit anybody, baby or not. But yeah, accidents suck. And people who put others in danger, they don't think anything of it because they haven't crashed yet, right? And I've had friends like this who got new cars and they just wrecked them because they didn't drive safely. And, too bad for them, but then, somebody else is out of commission, right? So anyhow, I'm a respectable driver with my little crappy Honda Accord that spews black smoke. I gotta get a new car. But I guess I brought that up in the sense of what makes me angry and what I have a hard time. It's one of the emotional intelligences that I need to work on is patience, not necessarily anger. Because I want to tell you something about anger. I used to be very anxious in my 30s. I'm 48 now. And in my mid-30s, I was very stressed out. I had a lot going on. I was on probation at one time for getting busted with mushrooms, and I had to take drug tests at random phone calls to see if my color came up each day, to see if I had to go pee. And then I had to go in there to pee before I could go to work. So it stressed me out for a while. When that was all over, the stress, I started managing my stress differently and learning basically that drugs, I could take pharma my whole life, right? Go in and take Valium or clonazepam or something, Klonopin, right? But I don't want that shit. I want to be able to fucking think clearly. And I'd say that as a guy who smokes weed and has a few beers and likes to partake in other things. But I like my clarity. In the morning, I like to wake up and be coherent. I don't want to take something like an antidepressant, which is cycles into your system, or benzodiazepines, which do the same thing. I know what it's like to wake up with a benzo hangover. And you don't even realize it after the first few days because you just figure waking up is always like that. But those things are, great for short-term stress. But the point is, I wanted to manage my long-term stress. And so I worked on it. I learned a lot of techniques. I guess they would be Stoic techniques. And I studied Hermetic philosophy, which led me to alchemy and understanding, the lead to gold metaphor, to the extent where I don't, I've worked with herbs a lot, but I haven't done the alchemical stuff. And I don't really, in the modern day, I use different medium, let's just say. And I think that working with base metals and turning it to gold, if people realize it's a metaphor for turning the shitty situation into something good, that everything that happens to you is a learning experience. Doesn't matter if you lose somebody or lose your car keys. Doesn't matter if you lose your job. Doesn't matter if you lose your guitar. Doesn't matter if your house blows up or you go blind. You figure, I need to go on because I'm called upon in this life for some purpose. I exist for a reason. You may not think so. And I understand that sentiment and respect it. There were times in my life where I felt the same way, that, not that humans don't matter, but that each individual life is irrelevant. But I don't think that necessarily anymore. I've seen things that have changed my mind. And so my experience is one of understanding humility, just that we're here, we've got to make the most of it, and we've got to work the whole time. Got to work towards something better. It's not about like just relaxing and having enough money to retire. It's about taking any amount of money I get, I'm going to work with it. If I ever come across any inheritance, which I probably won't, I'm going to take it and I'm going to buy some land and I'm going to work that land. I want to do things, not sit on cash and wealth, because I've learned that lesson. And this is what I was going to say about wisdom, that, it comes with age. It's not something that you can just buy. It's not something, but it's also not something that just comes with age, because you can get wisdom younger by going through more experiences. It's not something natural, right? So in the world of us trying to discover who we are and our existence on this planet, there's so many people that we can't trust. And this is politicians, CEOs, pastors, priests, professors, scientists, journalists, the intellectuals of the world. All of these people, I don't know. It's like I want to have respect for authority. I want to have respect for those who are the, quote, experts on things. And we've been let down so many times as a society and lied to by those who have power over others. And my point here is to try to find your own power within, your own truth. Do your homework, do your research. You're not going to get it from anybody like me or a guru. If you go to India, you're not going to get it from some teacher online or going to some, motivational speech. What you get is little glimpses of that truth that you have to develop. And I'm saying this on behalf of stress, for example, anxiety. Being able to overcome it means a constant practice every day and an awareness. When something happens, you feel butterflies in your stomach, feel stress, you got to turn it off, but you got to focus on doing that. You might not be successful, but the more you practice, it's neuroplasticity, the way our brains work. You will create neural pathways in your brain that will allow you to recognize and shut it off. This goes back to anger. It's the same way. But you don't want to shut it off completely. You want to shut those valves down to where, let's just say that there's a valve and then a secondary valve. You got to let it out right away. It's like when I hit my hand with a hammer, right? God damn it. Get really frustrated for 20 seconds and then go and laugh it off and go back to work. Because that's what we do. Well, some people can do that maybe if they hurt themselves, but not necessarily everyone. Some people can just sit there and whine about their wound for days on end. Oh God, it's healing up. Shut the fuck up. Get back to work. That's just me. But it's the same way with mental wounds. When people lose a loved one, often they sit there and they stew on it forever, and then they make everybody else around them feel bad. Like, oh my God, I lost so and so. You're like, that was 5 years ago, and they're like, oh, well, you never forget. It's like, well, no, but we've all lost people. You've got to be able to move on, just like everyone else. We have to live our lives, so that's difficult. But back to the non-trust thing, we want to be able to trust our family and friends. But when I was talking about politicians, professors, scientists, all those different people that we have to be careful about trusting, it's in the sense that it's this simple. Anyone who can gain something from you or is trying to sell something, whether it be a book deal, somebody on a podcast circuit because they're selling their book. And you're like, oh, wow, interesting. And then you find out the book's total shit. How many times has that happened to people where they're like, oh yeah, I heard this guy was really good, and so I got really into his work and found out he was completely full of it. It's not always their fault either. Sometimes people really believe the nonsense that they say. But I'm saying that on behalf of those who are seeking any type of spiritual awareness or enlightenment. Don't go to people on YouTube, right? Don't go to forums or, and you don't need to go to India. You might have an experience, like I said, a short-term Satori awakening awareness. But to have a long-term enlightenment, which I believe is, being able to eliminate stress, fear, being able to live in the present while still not ignoring the world around you, that takes practice. And I'm trying. I've been working on it for years, and I'm going to continue working on it. And maybe I'll perfect it when I'm older, but it's also about balance. It's not about becoming a monk and hiding away from any family or friends. It's also not becoming a guy who has 20 kids and lives, without any morals or values and goes off and does whatever he wants and goes to prison. Not that everyone who has a lot of kids goes to prison, but you know what I'm saying? Like the opposite of the monk. And you think, well, what's better or worse? Like, we are put here to raise a family, and there's beliefs within Hermeticism that basically the first half of your life is the householder stage up till you're 40. That doesn't mean you have to have a family or anything, but that's what you're doing. Responsibility, work, building something. And then somewhere in your 40s, you start to change. Your brain starts to shift, and you start seeking something deeper. The thing is, I've been seeking that shit since I was young, but my brain wasn't ready for it. And now I'm starting to understand it, which has changed my perspective on a lot of things. But, it's a unique world out there. It's not all that we think it is. It's not what we believe. It's not as it appears. And I'm not trying to get into some woo bullshit, because believe me, I know how it is to hear people talking about any spiritual crap, which is why I avoid discussing it on this channel. Let's just say I've had some experiences that have led me to believe that there's a consciousness that it's permeable. Like we're in it right now, like this reality, but we're also in other realities, if that makes sense. It's not like I believe that you can tap into some other dimension, although that's kind of how it is. I believe that the brain can pick up on different frequencies and wavelengths, and this leads me to believe that maybe certain people have abilities that get taken for granted that others don't believe. But at the same time, for every one of those, there's probably 1,000 fake psychics and BS palm readers. And I get it. They have shops. I believe there's something to it. It's just really hard for people to believe astrologers and psychics when they're wrong so much of the time. It's almost like these, and they're usually very vague things. There are some people who are claimed to be able to read spirits and know about the person. They can name people that they shouldn't know, things like that, but generally it's like, oh, you're gonna have a great future and you're gonna meet the love of your life, that kind of stuff. And people fall for it because they want to. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter if they're accurate or not. And they may even manifest some of the things that they're told because it's what they wanted to hear. And that's great too. I'm not here to diss, the psychics of the world, but they kind of go on that list along with the priests and the pastors. You don't need somebody else to baptize you. You don't need somebody else to read your palm. You don't need somebody else to tell you what to do with your time or what to do with your money, your taxes. We hire people in politics that are supposed to take our tax money and do good things with it, but we know that they don't. And we generally let them oversee that. But other than them, the rest of these people, whether they want money on a collection plate or they want to sell you something at your door, people always have money as their interest. And I want to leave on this note. It's not just people who want to talk to you, or not everybody who has a lot to say to you wants your money. The difference is, if they are trying to tell you something, be cautious about what they say. A lot of the times you'll find people who just want to talk. You'll meet people in your life who really want to tell you about something and be part of your life and, take the time to hang out. But we become so suspicious of one another that, like, what does this person want from me? And I guess that's why I don't envy people who are like millionaires or billionaires, especially, because you don't really know who's your friend. It's got to be a really awkward thing. Who's texting you because they want to hang out, and who just wants to go ride in your badass, chopper. I don't know. It's not like I would turn down millions of dollars. It's just, I don't envy those who are extremely wealthy, because I don't believe they have the wisdom to handle the money. Some of them do, and those are the ones you don't hear about. And good for them. Good for them. I remember hearing a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but when I was younger, in the 80s, Lita Ford and Ozzy Osbourne did that song together. Never Cry, or I don't remember what it was, but Lita Ford was a guitarist chick, in the 80s, and apparently she made a lot of money. She did really well. And from what I read in Rolling Stone or some shit like 10 years ago, she bought an island somewhere in the Pacific and moved her family out there and raised her kids there and just totally cut herself off from society, pretty much. Didn't do interviews or anything like that. And I was like, that is awesome. That's like the dream right there. That's like my dream, minus the island. I'd rather stay on the mainland somewhere, but be able to just be left alone and have your own property, but be able to interact with other people if you want to, right? And that's why I'd want to live on the mainland, be able to access and travel, but not just be burdened by living near the city, because it's not what my heart desires, living with too many people. And having the internet I can share with a lot more people. And that's kind of a conundrum, isn't it? Anyway, I guess I've been rambling for a while and talked about quite a few things here. How long have I been on here? Oh my God, 23 minutes of your time. So anyway, that's my ramble for the moment, and I'll talk to you all next time. Thanks for listening to me, for what it's worth. As I mentioned earlier, I'm uploading a couple of the podcasts with the poem and the story that I read. And other than that, bye now.